Like to call to order the Parks and Public Works Committee special meeting Friday, March 15th, 2024. Will the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Baldwin.
Here.
Chair is not here. Deanna's here. So I'm speaking for you. And Kimball.
Here.
And Roach. Here.
Can I get a motion to approve the absences of members, Cherick and Johnson, please?
I motion to approve the absences. Second.
Motion Roach, second, Kimball. All in favor, please say yes. Yes.
Yes.
Now I need an approval of the agenda, please. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I-
please?
I motion to the agenda.
Can I get a second?
Yeah.
Motion Roach, second Kimball. All in favor, please say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get approval of minutes, the regular meeting minutes from January 23rd? Can I please get a motion to approve the minutes from January 23rd, 2024?
I move to approve the minutes from January 23rd. I will second that.
Okay, motion Kimball, second Roach. All in favor, please say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're moving on to the first public comments section on today's agenda items only. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, state your name and your address, and approach the podium.
Good morning. Ken Butler on behalf of the Saugatuck Parks and Rec Commission. I've been here before and packages I will hand to the chair. Some of you have seen this information before. I'm here about the possibility of using the closed dump site for a walking and running trail and specifically for a cross-country course for the Saugatuck High School cross-country team. And I've said this before, they don't have a home meet. We have kids graduating this year who have competed at the state level who've never had a home meet. This fall, the Saugatuck Middle School had its first home meet in years. For those of you who came out and watched it, the weather was like this. And it was wonderful to see these kids running in their uniforms, crossing the finish line. Parents and grandparents are there to watch them, brothers and sisters. And then the families walking together back to their cars. Because that's the wonderful thing about a cross-country meet. Unlike the track meet, the coach loaned me this sweatshirt. Anybody who's been to a track meet knows they take 3 to 4 hours. So cross-country meets are wonderful. This was referred to the administration to do its due diligence. And I thought I would help it out by doing my own research because I was puzzled because there were 2 reports that I submitted to the former city manager. One was, I think it's about a 130-page report from the EPA from when they closed the site. So the EPA report is dated September 13th, 1990. In it, it indicates that the dump was closed in 1984. The site was capped with 9 inches of sand, 15 inches of clay, and then seeded. This summer, if you can do the math, it will be the 40th anniversary since that dump has been closed. But in that report, and then a couple of years later, there's another engineering report that was forwarded to the township. And that was when a couple wells in Saugatuck Township, they found some toxins in the wells, so they wanted to reinvestigate the dump site to see if it was the source for the leaking to these wells. So that engineering report was done, I believe, in '96. And it found that it was not any contamination from the dump site that was leaking. But what I found interesting is in both those reports, they referenced the history of the site and indicated that they call it the STL, the Saugatuck Township landfill. The site is currently owned by Saugatuck Township, the Village of Saugatuck, and the Village of Douglas. Now, I had gone over to Allegan and pulled the Register of Deeds, both deeds are in the name of the village of Saugatuck. So I went on to the other engineering report, and it also references the fact that the dump site is owned and operated by the three communities together. So I went to the city of Douglas, the city of Saugatuck, and actually went in the basement of Saugatuck Township. And there is nothing that any of the clerks can tell me about any operating agreement from 1960, which I found offensive because I remember the 1960s. But anyway, I had a history problem. So I went to the history source and went to the Douglas History Center and got to meet Mr. Eric Hollenbeck, who is an absolute gem to work with if ever you have a history question. I went and saw him on 3:30 in the afternoon. At 10 o'clock that night, he was emailing me copies of the commercial record, and I've attached the those to the two packages. And from October 1967, okay, maybe I don't exactly remember that. It talks about the landfill plan that was being done by the three communities. In fact, in the October 1967, on the third page, it has the minutes of the Saugatuck Township proceedings where they voted to pay the sum necessary to purchase the land with the other two communities. And that same agreement between the three communities was also referenced in 1967. And in one of the two, there's actually an editorial complimenting the leadership of all three communities for working together to solve a common problem that serviced them until the dump site was closed. So it looks like while the title is in the city of Saugatuck, or village of Saugatuck's name, there is actually a agreement somewhere where the three communities agreed to work together. Since that time, I know that this committee recommended and Mr. Hines commissioned an engineering firm to do a testing of the dump site. And for those who don't remember, the dump site is next to the freeway and just north of the water and sewer facility. So this is not what you'd call really attractive commercial land, and obviously would not be a residential site. But the essence of that report was you can walk on it, you can run on it, but don't go digging down and breaking the cap. That clay and sand and vegetation is there for a reason. You could put a trail on top, but if you don't break the cap, it's fine to use. And they're no longer testing. There were 40 vents put on for methane collection. Those are no longer necessary. There is no methane being produced. So what I'm asking this commission to do is adopt a resolution recommending to the city of Saugatuck to pass a resolution supporting the development of a walking running trail at the abandoned and what the EPA calls the Exit 41 landfill site. If you have any questions, let me know. The cross-country coach is in school today. He could not be here, but I have walked the site with two of your members, three of them. There's actually a trail that, aside from some trees and clearing, there's at least a beginning trail that would be enough. I think the kids could be running this fall.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. We do have to stop you there. I'm sorry. You did benefit from the graces of our clerk taking a little bit to get you started. There'll be more time at the end of the meeting to
Right, thank you.
further. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience care to speak? No? Anyone online? Okay, seeing none, we will close our first public comment section and move on to our discussion. Start off with DPW. Mr. Herbert?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Few things to go over with you today. One, we had talked previously about issuing a request for proposals to lease out the Oval Beach concession stand. We've done that, and I don't know if we've received any proposals yet, but the clerk would be in a better position to answer that than I would, but we are accepting them until April 5th. So we've got a little bit of time left, and if we get a decent applicant and they put a good proposal together, then we can evaluate at that time if we're gonna go through with leasing it out or not, or if not, as it sits right now, DPW is still planning on operating that concession stand, but hopefully we get a good applicant, because that would really help us out at Public Works quite a bit. And several of us are now ServSafe certified, so we can safely serve food out of the concession stand if we need to. Second, City Council approved the purchase of the Falcon Asphalt Hot Box reclaimer, and so that has been ordered. We expect to take delivery of that within the next 2 weeks or so. And once we get it in hand, we'll be able to get out in the streets and take care of potholes just in time for pothole season in Michigan. So Village Square Playground, I'm just gonna touch lightly on this. I know we're gonna talk about it later, but DPW has spent significant time doing site preparations for the site over there. They're pretty much all done. It looks different. That's alarming to some people, and change always is, but we're on a good pace to get a quality product in the ground. And I had somebody stop by the garage just today to pick up some of the pieces of the old playground. And as I looked at all that equipment, it just reminded me of how important it is that we got something new in the ground over there. So it's really welcoming from Public Works to see the change. And then we did just have a budget discussion. You'll hear about more about this in the future if the budget gets approved for it, but I am recommending that we start preparing for replacing the siding on the main restroom at Butler and Main. It's overdue. Another reminder, we have the first brush and leaf collection of 2024, starting next week, Tuesday for the east side of the river and Wednesday for the west side of the river. I already see some piles out there, so we'll be prepared for that. And then as we speak right now, there's our new Oval Beach manager is at the Public Works garage interviewing seasonal candidates already. So Public Works, we have a lot of so there's two components to our seasonal staffing. There's the Public Works needs, which we usually try to hire about 4 people. And then the Oval Beach, which is significantly more. But Public Works, we're fortunate to have a lot of returning employees this year. So we're pretty well staffed at Public Works already. It's just going to be a matter of securing some more employees out at the Oval Beach to help us out, which is not easy, but we also have some returning staff at Oval Beach. So they're very welcome to come back for us. And then tree work, we did just go through a significant amount of the city's annual tree work that we do every single year. That includes, there's a whole range of services that we provide, tree care, pruning. The more common one that you hear about is, well, people dislike the removals. So we did remove 5 trees total, one of them being a Fraser fir down at Village Square Park, but they will be replaced. And in 3 of the 5 cases, I've actually worked, this is pretty common, but I tend to work with whoever's the nearest property owner, and just see if they have any preference on what tree variety they would like to see, as they're going to see it more often than all of us. And as long as it's a city, approved and proven street tree and it meets their request, then we'll go through with it. So happy to work with people on trees all the time. So part of the tree care program that the tree care side of it is like, I just got a new development plan for a vacant lot at 254 Francis Street, of which I think some people have raised concerns about a really mature oak tree at that property and what the construction might or might not do to the tree. And so I have an arborist in town today working on a tree that's over by Mount Baldhead. And so before he leaves town, I plan on just going over there and doing a site assessment of that tree. Just to kind of see, as it relates to the driveway is the biggest concern for that tree and potential root damage. So instead of just giving my 2 cents about it, I'd like to get a certified arborist to go take a look at it and see what is likely to happen. How close can we excavate around that tree without doing too much damage to it to the point where it kills it or significantly damages it. So I'd be curious to get a report back on that just to have on file. So it's also an opportunity for us to learn. And then also towards the end of April, we do the annual Arbor Day celebration. So we try to plant trees or highlight trees or make a celebrate Arbor Day around a tree that's kind of centrally located downtown. And so with the work being done at Village Square, I just thought, why not make the Village Square, the tree that came out, that Fraser fir, why don't we replant a tree there and then make that one this year's Arbor Day tree? And that'll kind of have a nice background, hopefully, of our new playground as well. So, and then one more thing I want to highlight, a couple more things, but one is like Sarah Williams really did a great job last year. She stepped in out of necessity being the Oval Beach manager, and she was able to work with the Disability Network Lakeshore, specifically Holly Harvey, and they're willing to donate a floating wheelchair for Oval Beach. So it's a pretty expensive product. It's about $3,000 to $4,000 for the unit, and it's no cost to the city, and it just helps promote accessibility out on beautiful Lake Michigan for us. So really
That's
nice
great.
job on that, Sarah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sarah.
You don't have a picture of it by chance, do you? Yeah, if you want to see
See
it,
it,
what
yes,
that
of
looks like.
course.
We already have a wheelchair that has like balloon tires on it just to help people get to the water.
Yeah.
But this one takes it to the next level and
Oh.
actually can go into the water. It's pretty awesome.
Very cool. And it works on our existing boardwalk that goes down on the north end or?
Yeah, and it's got balloon tires, so it's, suitable for sand.
Oh,
use
that
too.
is lovely.
And that whole thing can just go straight into the water. It's awesome.
It is.
It's next level. So, and then switching over just to some basic updates about the capital improvements plan. We're still planning on working together with the Saugatuck Township on the reconstruction of Bridge Street off of Blue Star Highway. So that's going to be taking place very, very soon. It's almost construction time. And then citywide crack sealing. Again, crack sealing is a treatment for, it's like preventative maintenance on streets just to help preserve the roads that are in decent condition out there. We want to keep them in good condition for as long as possible. So crack sealing is a good way to fill in those gaps. That'll help minimize water infiltration and better protection for the freeze thaw cycles that we experience in wintertime. And then the city did get, it's called a DSMI grant, but which stands for the Distribution Systems Materials Inventory. Basically, this is it's a requirement imposed on us by the state that states that we need to do an inventory of all the water service lines going into individual households in the city to make sure that they're not made of lead. And so we did get funded for it. I think it was about $221,000, if I'm not mistaken, for that service. And it should cost about that much to have the service done, but that'll hopefully get done before late October. That helps us meet our lead and copper rule compliance. And then switch it, last thing, I'll stop boring you. City Hall update. We did a lot of work on the exterior of the building last year. Scraped all the lead paint off of it, repainted it. Now we're looking at the landscaping a bit more. And so it's going to be a two-phase project. The first phase is going to involve tearing out some concrete that's in poor shape. And then while we have the concrete torn out, it's a good opportunity for us to connect the gutters to the catch basin out front. And as it sits right now, there's always mulch over the sidewalk over here, and that's because our gutters kind of spew out towards the sidewalk. And so this is a more permanent solution. And then new concrete. And then phase two of it will be replacing all the irrigation around City Hall and doing some landscaping updates. That's all I've got, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions for our superintendent? No? Thank you. Appreciate that. Now we're on to really the reason that we called our special meeting is the review of the pallet sign design and Blue Star multimodal path. So I don't know if you want to kick that off or, okay. Mr. Manager.
All right, well, thank you, Madam Chair, and first, a big thank you to committee member Kimball, who my understanding is that, you've been, she's the local expert on the trail and its progress and has been a part of it, working on that for quite some time. So I appreciated her reaching out to meet with me to kind of help get me up to speed here as I've been serving in this interim role. So my understanding is, and certainly, committee member Kimball, feel free to add anything in. You all, I believe, met at the end of January and kind of reviewed a few different options that C2AE had put together for the pallet sign. And then based on your feedback that you have, actually, Ms. Kimball kind of compiled all of that information and shared it with Mr. Sikor, who was on Zoom today with us. And he took that feedback and then kind of updated a rendering for you that's in your packet today. And Sarah, if you could put that up. So for today's purpose, I think we'll have Mr. Sikor maybe, kind of run through the changes that were made. I know there were some questions last time about movement of the pallet sign and how much it would be moving. And then we also want to tie that discussion into the proposed traffic signal for that intersection as well. We can kind of touch on some of the prior recommendations from studies in that area related to a traffic signal. Essentially, these are two pieces that that we need some decisions on relatively soon, so we can kind of keep the overall design of the trail going and ultimately get to the point where we're bidding the project and then constructing it on time to meet our grant obligations. So anything else to add, Ms. Kimball, that I missed, or?
I just wanted to add that one of my Friends of the Blue Star Trail fellow members is actually on Zoom.
Okay.
So Richard Donovan, so he even has more history on this than I do. So I asked him to participate in case we have any questions that come up. So just so you know,
Excellent.
he's also there.
Excellent. Great. We've got a good team here. So Mr. Sikor, if you want to maybe just kind of walk the group through kind of the changes that have been made based on the feedback that they made at the last meeting, touch on like how much the pallet sign would be moving and other kind of updates for us at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had submitted the the preliminary kind of options, a few renderings. I think we had 4 of them on there with some broken down cost estimates. And then you had sent me what Nancy had kind of compiled as far as the feedback from that. So what we did on the updated rendering is, we took that feedback you had mentioned as far as the hardscape and stone. And then we added, we showed what the banner placement would look like if you guys wanted to consider, that you have a banner out there part of the year. As far as the changes to the plan view, or we had attached a couple of kind of landscape plans along with those renderings. We haven't updated anything like that. We were still waiting for further clarification on which direction we were heading, but we did want to, just take those initial comments that you guys had after reviewing it and put that into something that you could see. And with this rendering, a lot of the design effort, it takes just getting kind of everything set up. From now on, if we want to tweak options or just kind of move things around here or there to see what they look like, we do have that capability. So, doing small adjustments on things like the hardscapes or the plant materials isn't, it isn't too much of a design effort right now. So any input you have or anything that you kind of want to look at or see, just to get an idea of how it looks or how it looks, we are capable of doing that.
Mr. Sikor, can you touch on for the group too? Like, I think this is based on option like 2A from last time, which did involve some movement of the pallet sign. Can you kind of touch on how much movement that would entail?
Right. So on that initial document we had sent out with the 4 layouts, you see, we have the first option, which is we don't move the pallet sign at all. And if we do that, it puts that sign right up tight to the trail. We kind of have less room to work with, and it's not ideal. So why we show 2 different renderings for option 2A and 2B is that there's a number of ways that we could move the sign to accommodate the trail. And they're slight adjustments. As far as how much they're actually moving, I think it's less than 5 feet or something along those lines, but it's moving it just enough to accommodate for the trail. And why there was a 2A and 2B, a couple different ways we could do that. Based on the programming of the hardscape material and the plant materials. But from our cost estimate and what we had put together, it was a negligible difference to move the sign and kind of get what you want out of the trail. I think that, while you're redoing this area, that would be your best bet if it's a difference of, between $15,000 to $20,000 to move that sign to accommodate the trail rather than, trying to squeeze the trail in there to avoid the cost of moving the sign. We wouldn't advise that, which is why we showed the updated rendering on the number 2 option.
And another piece we wanted to make sure and touch on and present, and Sarah, if you could pull up the signal rendering. So just a quick run through. So essentially the the city and the township were successful in obtaining some large grant dollars to kind of construct the overall trail. But there were a couple items that weren't part of those grant requests. One was potential pallet sign work or improvements on this particular intersection as it related to signals. So we think that Jared, so far, we're thinking that maybe some of the pallet sign work can be included in the overall trail design, but then there's some extra costs outside of that with improving this intersection with signals that really weren't covered by the grants. And so we have some updated estimates on what those costs would be. And I think you had some of that information in your packet last time, depending on the option that was chosen. So the city council approved an agreement, the general services agreement, to kind of do some design engineering, which is covering the pallet sign, but also a potential traffic signal here. So just to touch on the traffic signal piece. So the Friends of the Blue Star Trail, and Nancy, correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here, as they were looking at this project several years ago, we're working with Fleece and Vanderbrink, who are our city engineers, and they had kind of done a study on whether or not this intersection warranted a traffic signal, and essentially their finding was that it did, that there was enough of a need that they saw that it should be signaled, and then they kind of said, especially if you're going to add a new trail through this area, it's something that really should be signaled. The Allegan County Road Commission, taking home here. Allegan County Road Commission also did a study on this intersection, and then further up where the roundabout's going, and looking at, again, whether or not this intersection should be signaled. They found that the traffic warrants met the criteria for a signal. The crash warrants didn't, but given that the traffic warrants and again, that a trail would be constructed to this area, their recommendation and from the firm that they use also had recommended a signal in this intersection. So C2AE has been kind of designing, working on signal design as well, based on the previous rendering and that Fleece and Vanderbrink had put together. So so we had kind of a combination of things for you to kind of take a look at rendering wise and get your feedback on.
And then the other thing was and Jared, you need to help me out here with the language, but basically that the curvature, and that's probably not the right word, of the curb and that kind of thing on the intersection. We talked about that a little bit at our last meeting, that we could we could extend that, and it would make it so the trucks would have the appropriate angle or whatever, to turn.
So they're not climbing the curb,
Thank you.
basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was considered very expensive, so I didn't spend much time on that. But subsequently, I think some work has been done going through all the numbers, and with my conversation that I had with you yesterday, Jared, it seems as if maybe with the existing dollars that could be accommodated, and I wanted you to just talk about that as well, and why that might be a good thing to do.
Right. So, what we had included in our initial proposal is that we wanted to take a look at that area and kind of suggest some maintenance improvements based on what we saw. And that was the first thing that standed out. Is if you look at, you could even pull up the Google Earth and zoom in down to the pallet side, and you can see, the discoloration in the concrete from where that curb has been replaced, because, that the curve currently doesn't meet the turn radius requirement for a WB 67, which just means a semi-truck trailer. There's a minimum MDOT standard requirement for making that turn as a semi-trailer, and that particular intersection would be non-compliant. Now, this is a really interesting section of road because the Blue Star Highway is a county road, so MDOT initially defers jurisdiction over the road to the county, but where it crosses into the city limits, it is then jurisdiction is then passed off from the county to the city. So the reason that you've never had to have a intersection there that's WB 67 compliant is because it's at the discretion of the city. Technically, if this were a road with that MDOT had jurisdiction over, and you had a radius that looked like that, we would have no trucks signs, or there would be a cautionary sign prior to the intersection. So that was one thing that, just looking at, it looks like the curb as it is has been damaged previously. Now, you're going to pump some money into this new and improved landscape design. maybe it's time to rethink making that turn radius compliant and, moving things around to protect not only, trail goers, but your new sign landscape.
Can we talk some more about, and I'm sorry, okay, I know that the city basically is on the hook for the cost of this traffic signal. And I know we've kind of gone through the whole gamut of like, it's county road, but that's our understanding is that we'd be on the hook for that. What portion, how much is it going to cost? What's the estimate that it's going to cost and how much of that is going to be covered by, if any, Friends of Blue Star, or is it all 100% on the city?
It's 100% the city. Basically, the Friends have put in as much money as we have available for this project and have felt that, it's really not, that signal is needed.
Yeah.
It was warranted even without the trail. So it's on the city.
And what was the estimate again? I know that we had it. I just.
What Jared had put in was 200,000. And I don't know, Jared, if that's like just a rough number or how much.
That's a very rough number based on the renderings that we got from F&V. And we're working with a sub-consultant on the traffic signal engineering. And so we kind of matched our high level cost to what they were thinking, and it's a ballpark number. And we haven't really done much programming with that. We've taken the renderings that Richard sent us from F&V, and we've kind of went off the basis of that. If there was additional input for, if you guys were thinking something else or you wanted to see something else, we haven't even went down other options as far as the traffic signal beside that. It's kind of the overview of the renderings that we got.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, I mean, that's just a portion of the work. So, so far, like the updated estimates are that like maybe, $60,000 of the pallet side improvements might qualify under the grants that we've obtained. I mean, but essentially with the traffic installation, the roadway construction in that area, and he's got, some miscellaneous soft costs in here, Jared. I mean, we're anywhere from 316,000 to 403,000, depending on the option that's chosen, correct?
Right. And we really want to nail that down because as me and Nancy were talking about this yesterday, it's there's going to be additional costs from doing these projects as standalone projects. If we do the trail as one single project and then we come in later and we do the traffic signal, there's additional costs from doing that. Now we could try to mitigate that a little bit by, when Ryan H was still around, this is what we talked about, is just kind of doing them almost parallel, but just kind of, one in front of the other. So it's all kind of happening at the same time. It's going to be two different construction projects, but without a huge gap in between them. So, anything that we're doing other than, the grant isn't going to pay for those traffic signals. We know that. But if we think about it, the game is kind of, as far as construction contracts, if we can do as much as possible with the roadway and the trail at the same time so that it's ready for the traffic signal, then, we're limiting any cost that the city would have to spend in addition to the just the traffic signal alone. If we're able to, kind of work any of the roadway improvements along in with the trail work. And then that's just a matter of, getting it approved by our grant authorities, whether or not that scope would be included.
I mean, I think that there's a big appetite for a light there anyway. This might be the impetus that it takes us to get that. I haven't heard a lot. And my understanding also is that the fire department would be able to manage it. So they can turn the light. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's definitely possible. I don't know if that's included in that cost estimate, but yes, when that was looked at before, that was what the thinking was, that then the fire department could control it.
I mean, it's just, like I said, it's easy to lump it into, Blue Star Trail is requiring, but I think that really that this is, from my perspective, anyone, from what my understanding and the pulse that I've seen in the community is that this is something that there's a big appetite for anyway. And if this is what it's going to take to get us there, probably a good thing.
And my
Sounds good,
concern
though.
is right, that intersection, just the safety aspect of it is very concerning. There's cars that are coming out of Lake Street that are particularly the ones that are turning right.
Mhm.
When you're making that right turn, you have a tendency to look left.
Mhm.
And so you're going to have riders that are heading north that you potentially, or even pedestrians, because that intersection will get so much more crossing than it does now. And I've been a big proponent of this trail, but I said the last thing I want to have happen is we install the trail and then somebody gets seriously injured.
Well, I
or
think
worse.
most would agree that it's dangerous now with
It's-
the trail improvements.
Exactly.
We've all been at that light.
Right, so
plenty of
I
times,
just feel
yeah.
like this is just such a perfect
it.
opportunity to kind of push
Okay.
that forward.
Okay.
And one thing I'll add is that coming out of the 5-year parks plan, with all the municipalities and the school working together, is the major theme coming out of that is connectivity of our downtowns, of our trail systems, of our waterways, all of that. And that is definitely a hiccup right now where you really at least with smaller children, getting across that intersection is really troubling.
Yes.
So I think that definitely plays into, what has come out of that study and plan as well.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on this?
I had one more question. So Jared, did you state that, so we had obviously drawings at the last meeting of this. This has moved over since then? Is the drawing, just the drawing? So not actually moved. So is that included in this? It'll be further away? Because I think one of our concerns is that this is very close to the trail itself. We wanted to make sure that the sign was protected. So I wasn't sure if I heard that correctly.
That was the 5 feet to move it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
But
my
is it-
Yeah,
understanding.
that's the most recent rendering.
Okay.
And like I said, as far as our rendering options, if we wanted to go back and, change it to number 3, as far as just going in and shifting that around on a rendering, we can do that pretty easily. What's more important than the renderings is those landscape plans that we attached. With the renderings, that kind of gives you a better idea of the actual dimensions. And we show some topography on there too. So as far as an accurate picture of what's there, looking at those kind of overhead landscape construction plans will give you kind of a better idea of the proximity of things.
Okay. Thank you. And I know we talked about moving to natural local materials.
Right.
For use of that. So is that sort of
Th- tho-
updated through
Those
this?
were all in my comments that I sent to Jared, and
Yeah.
I believe those are all included.
Okay, great.
Sir, can you show the other rendering with yeah. Yep. So Jared, yeah, so I think this differs from what you were presented with last time. I think it has some more natural stone. I think you guys talked about
Yep.
more natural like plants for the area and
And then the banner being added, I think is
Yeah.
really helpful.
And I think they
We'd
did a
had
good
considered
job
that, so.
putting in what we kind of had a consensus to what that should
Yep.
look like. I think that looks really good.
And Scott, you guys are good with that?
I have several questions if it's okay.
Please.
Jared, maybe you can provide an answer. When you talked about widening the intersection potentially to meet, turning radius standards for semi trucks, does this rendering, is that already accounted for in this rendering? Or does that essentially mean that all of this has to get bumped back to make it wider?
Right. So if you were to take that's shown on the landscape plan that was sent in the original submission when we had the 4 renderings. Like I was saying, that overhead landscape plan, if you go down to option 3, that will show you. So to answer your question, no, the rendering doesn't account for that, but the rendering is kind of just to give you a visual representation. If you liked all of the landscape and hardscape features of the rendering, it would be easy for us to incorporate that into option 3 with the WB67 turn radius as far as the construction plans go.
Yeah, thanks for that. I just know that there's limited room at that as far as like the whole pallet sign area, it's kind of just a sliver of land. And so if we're bumping things back at all, it's going to really affect the whole layout of it, but.
Right, and that's why option 3 was so expensive, is it's all that fill and it's a new retaining wall.
Mhm. And then, so I kind of assume now that, this is the rendering is more geared towards like the landscaping improvements, not like the street, correct? Is that safe to say? Or?
Yeah,
So FMV will be kind of overseeing some of the street aspects of it, just because the reason I bring it up out of concern is because, essentially as you look at that rendering, all the stormwater runs down towards, where the photo's being kind of taken to a catch basin in front of that intersection, which is along the concrete curb there. And that concrete curb was all new because Michigan Gas Utilities had to do some repair work to their natural gas main there. But I just want to make sure that stormwater is kind of being captured. And I assume if the concrete curb is going to be eliminated, then there's gonna be some consideration for like a improved valley gutter on the asphalt curbing is. But again, it sounds like that's probably something that Fleece and Vanderbrink will probably have to weigh in on, I assume.
Oh, well, I did take your comments and forwarded it to the design team, you know, and you're right, yes, the renderings are kind of more to capture the aesthetics of the landscape and the hardscape, but yes, we did take into the consideration the utilities that would need to change based on you know, these changes. We do have Tobo in the area, so we're aware of where the you know, where the storm is and where you got electrical out there and all of those details as well. It's just not very easy to show on the rendering.
Yeah, I got you. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, do you have any idea of like how far back that would have to get bumped to, you know, just to create some more turning space for trucks?
Real quick, if I may, Sarah, can you check to see if screen sharing is on? I just got a comment from the Zoom audience that all they can see is a file folder. So we can, just so they can see what we're talking about. Sorry, Scott, to interrupt. Thank you.
Just gonna pull up that preliminary document real quick because we did show on the landscape plan, you know, how much everything was moving. Didn't have it off the top of my head, but we do have it there in that one.
That's all right. I can catch up with you later. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Okay. But yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, just because you know, we showed it on the option that isn't including that. The new rendering isn't. We didn't do it over the option that shows the turn radius, so it might be kind of hard to visualize. But if you have seen that original kind of packet we sent with the 4 renderings and the construction plan, that gives you a lot better idea of you know, kind of the additional fill that's going to be added, where the location of the new retaining wall would be, and how much area you're going to have to work with back there.
Thank you.
Nancy, is all of this updated on the Friends website to access as well?
No, you mean these kind of,
The renderings, no?
no, just since they're still preliminary.
Preliminary, okay.
Yeah. Well, Jared, I guess, you know, what I kept trying to confirm yesterday with our call was, because some of the construction costs are actually coming in a little bit, or the estimates at least are coming in a little bit lower in some aspects of the trail than what were anticipated. We think that we could actually do this expanded turning radius or whatever, you know, all the land, most of the landscape improvements. There'd be some incremental cost to the city, but those things would be part of the money that's already been received. What we're talking about in incremental cost for the city would be the traffic signal. And then I guess some of the sprucing up of the pallet sign, you know, improvements, but that would be relatively minimal compared to when we saw these costs, you know, originally at the last meeting, they looked almost prohibitive, but we think that that wouldn't be the case. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, when we had looked at this before, that number for increasing the turn radius to be compliant was, you know, kind of eyebrow raising. But after, you know, meeting with Ryan and Daniel from the township and kind of going over all of the funding documentation and getting a better sense of that, I wouldn't say right now that anything should be out of the question as far as the options we presented. You know, as far as the high level estimates we put together and the funding that we know is going to be available, you know, there aren't any design options that we presented that would break the budget right now. You know, we may have to, once we get into final design and we really, you know, zero in on those numbers, we may reach a point where we have to, you know, make programming selections based on cost, but we certainly aren't there yet.
All right, so I mean, I think our goal is to get to actually signing off on the pallet sign design. And the placement is also, you know, a key component of that. So what do we need to do in order, I guess, to
I
reach a
would say
decision?
at this point, we'd have to get a motion to accept this and put it to council.
Certainly, and Jared, what's, I guess, your timeline? Because we have, you know, obviously we have Historic District Commission that we need to run this by as well. And then obviously you have some time to get it ready and get it in front of council. If PBW is ready to move it along. When do you need like a decision on at least what we're planning on as far as pallet sign, location, widening that intersection or making it more compliant with the wider wheelbase trucks, and then the signal?
Well, so right now I would say that, this isn't particularly the item that's holding up design. What's holding up design from moving forward too much is getting those environmental reviews back from NEPA and SHPO. And those could be anywhere from, it could still be 4 weeks out on those. So, as long as this decision is made and you guys have an answer to us on, yes, proceed with design based on, adding the WB 67 turn compliance, and, the programming selections of the hardscapes and the landscapes from the latest rendering. As long as you give us some sort of approval to move forward, within the next month or so, we're really not holding anything up until we get those environmental reviews back.
And you're pretty comfortable that the wheelbase design option is something that the overall trail grants would cover? That's the option on the spreadsheet that you sent that has the $270,000 with alternate add option 3. Is that what that is?
Yes. So why I'm confident that we're going to be able to include that in the scope is that everything that's been submitted, through MDOT so far and through the trust fund grants, is very conceptual. We haven't really even to go back and to add this portion of the design in for like our alignment and our construction documents that eventually are what get bid on. We aren't there yet. So it's not even necessarily a change, whereas most of the documents that we've submitted are just showing a highlight of the preliminary route. So whether we're doing $20,000 of landscaping or $80,000 of landscaping at the pallet sign, we haven't showed that to any of our grant authorities yet. We will need to confirm with them any of the items that have come into the grant project that weren't there before. For example that's coming to mind is the intersection up in Saugatuck Township with 66th Street and the Cemetery Road. That's completely different than we had looked at doing that before. So we will need to go to them and say, hey, is this, this is part of the scope, right? We can include this in the scope. Some of these items, like, landscaping for the pallet sign, I'm not even sure that we need, we'll want to go over it with them, everything that we're doing, obviously. But we haven't submitted anything about the pallet sign to them that would, require us to resubmit a changed layout once the selection's made. If that makes sense.
The reason is for the committee and why I'm asking that is that obviously I'm trying to determine which costs are potentially going to be covered by grant dollars, or which costs are, from the city's perspective are costs that we're going to have to make a decision on coming from another source within the city's funds. And so I just want to make sure that you guys have all that information. So if the committee's comfortable that you have been presented with enough information to make a recommendation on what options and that you would like to select, certainly you could do that. And then we'll take it to the Historic District Commission and then ultimately the city council to make a decision on whether, especially the signal pieces, I think is going to be the big piece that they're going to have to make a decision on, and whether or not they're willing to fund that at this point.
I would say the only thing that's giving me any pause is what Mr. Herbert has brought up about the amount of space it's going to require. Could we have a motion subject to that coming through and, something, because that is something certainly that we have to get. I don't feel comfortable presenting it to council without knowing that information, is what I would say. Would you agree with that?
Given the sensitivities of that area, absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to see it,
Okay.
in my opinion.
And-
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted you to clarify, what do you need to see, just so we're for sure?
I'm concerned about the amount of space that's going to require for that clearance to be made for the radius for the trucks to be able to turn. I know that area, I mean, we can look at a rendering, but that's certainly not to scale. And that just gives me pause, given the sensitivities of that area and the fact that we need to protect it. There's like 3 items that, so how far in are we going to have to go? What's the runoff going to be? And how does it affect any kind of the hardscape or the landscaping of that sign? And So I do want to move forward, but I do want it subject to that. And I can't, would that satisfy your concerns if we?
Yeah,
were able to?
as long as F and V reviewed it, I'd be satisfied,
Okay,
really. I mean, I don't necessarily need to see it, but as long as they can give me, kind of a ballpark idea of like, how many feet are we talking, like, because there's the existing curb
Right.
right now, how many feet are we talking, going back to achieve that kind of
Mhm.
turning radius, That's all. I just think that could be a potential source of,
would F and V be able, I know we meet again on the 26th. Would F and V, do you think, be able to reply to address that by then?
yeah, I
Without-
can't speak for them, but
them
they're
being- yeah.
very responsive to
Okay.
us, and that's something I can work with on them and just kind of give them, go over the few details that you mentioned already and see if maybe they've already given it thought and have a solution for it. I don't know.
Would we be holding much up if we waited until the 26th to vote on this? Do you think?
I just want to be
a
clear, wait,
question.
did you guys, you guys have seen the original submittal with the 4 options that show that option, right? That show the fill and the extra retaining wall and,
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
And
Yeah, I think
actually, I
we-
just asked Sarah if she could pull up the packet from the last meeting, because I think a lot of what you're asking was actually in there.
Right.
So if she could pull that up, maybe you'll be able to see it, and
Perfect.
that'll help.
Is our purview as this committee just to approve the look and the landscaping of the sign? Or is it our purview to talk about the radius and the traffic light?
Well, I think you certainly, as a Parks and Public Works Committee, it relates to those items for you to make a recommendation on, if you would say, yeah.
I think as Parks and Public Works, those are safety issues, and we would certainly want to at least
All 3 of those? Okay.
weigh in.
I like the look of the design of the sign itself with the natural stone.
Really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, like I said, I'd be comfortable moving it forward, but I just think that that's a big question that's out there. So I just hate to move
Mhm.
something forward without us having that kind of nailed down.
Does it help to move them separately, or do we have to move them all 3 at the same time?
It's probably better to move them at the same time, only because they kind of are all interrelated, yeah. Um,
Hmm.
Do you guys not have the items in your packet last time? Was it just separately handed?
It was in the packet.
They were not printed.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what Jared's saying, like that, I mean, basically, option 3, which I think you have the documents, well, you had them in your larger book there, so,
They weren't printed last time.
yeah, so.
That's it. I went back in. and
I
have the
see.
agenda. I
Okay.
do not have the printed packet that has
There we
4
go.
options. So that's what I was trying to see to compare.
Let me
Can
see
you
if
also
I-
my screen right now?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what I was talking about.
That's it.
So we can see the relocated curb. I saw that on there.
Now, for our recommendation, would you like to see this plan updated with the new rendering features? And then also, we were able to show when we put this together, just able to show that turn radius a little bit in the rendering as well. So,
Mhm.
to submit a formal recommendation, would you like to see those updated to include all of the features?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, because for the renderings, I don't see where this has been moved compared to the other ones. That was my because one of our concerns is it's so,
important enough
yeah,
to, to have
it's
it
so
nailed
close
down.
to the trail itself that we just want to make sure that the sign is protected, that that's thought about.
Yeah, and the renderings, again, they're more for a visual representation. It's not going to be as accurate as looking at the
Mhm.
construction plans.
I think it's worth taking the time to clear up those things and get this presented to the next meeting, from my perspective. If I can.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. That
I
works.
back that.
Okay.
So Jared, just, would you have would those be available by like next Friday if we were to put out their packet for the 26th then?
Yeah,
Would-
next Friday would be the 22nd. Yeah, we could have that done by then.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do we have anything else?
And just Jared, would you be able to clarify what costs, if any, then we should anticipate besides the traffic light? Or are we saying that we don't think there would be any. Just, I think that would be helpful to know.
We could.
Yeah, I think that as long as we're taking the traffic signal installation design into consideration when we are finalizing the trail plans. You know, other than that 200,000 number, I think that we should be able to include everything within the scope of the trail. Now, you know, the more time that it takes in between them, the more kind of a standalone nature of the project, then yeah, you have additional costs that you're not kind of taking care of, you know, 2 for 1, if you will, you know, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You know, if this was like if you were to separate these construction projects by a year, yeah, you're going to have some additional costs when it comes into the traffic signal, rather than just kind of taking care of everything, you know, within the same timeline. But, you know, that 200,000 number is definitely where I would start at looking. You know, the city should expect to spend that money on their own without any help from the grant. And everything that we can kind of incorporate into the trail design, we will.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today too. Everyone else set to move on?
Yep.
Okay. The next item was addressed by one of our, visitors, the cross-country trails at the old landfill, something that we've been talking about for a long time. Do you want to talk about it? Or I'm happy to talk about it. Take it up. Okay.
Fine.
So basically, the township has proposed some time ago to, lease this space from, the township as a separate, purview. They are able to, their Parks and Rec, can, make decisions and spend money, on their own. They have a millage. So, and what they've recommended is that they, lease the space and provide, cross-country trails there for our public schools. It's been purported, the public schools are in favor of it. The township's in favor of it. We did have an ecological survey done at the landfill that basically said as long as you don't disturb, but that's my understanding, as long as we don't disturb anything, it should be okay to legitimize those trails around it. I don't see a lot of drawback right now as in recommending this to council to look at it and basically having staff pull that together. Mr. Manager, is there anything that we need to look at that I haven't thought of that way?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you a little bit of information as far as just like additional context. You know, it's essentially, in the grand scheme of things, the council kind of sets the staff's priorities for the year, and this isn't on the immediate list that was set for us for this year. So if the council wants us to spend staff time and resources kind of further digging into the details, we would need want their direction to do that. When I understood that there was a request along these lines, I did circle back to our engineers that did the phase 1 environmental analysis, which is kind of like a high level environmental analysis on the site. And, essentially the engineers indicated that maybe a possibility to have some trails out here, but that we would need to test to make sure that there's not additional methane still coming from the vents, that we probably would need some overhaul work on the vents on site anyway. And then their larger concern was making sure that we're maintaining this cap, which my understanding from their correspondence involves the soil as well. And so that may trigger some additional consideration. Related to the EPA report that was discussed today. Mr. Heiss did send that on to one of the district supervisors for at Eagle in their materials management division, and they reviewed that. And at that time, they had noted that Waste Management was previously owned and operated the site. Again, the ownership pieces would be something that would take some time to dig into, but they had noted that may put them in the chain of liability and consideration here. And understanding from our treasurer yesterday that there may be some sort of historical agreement or perpetual agreements related to that site with Waste Management and what its use could be going forward, what could be done there. And so that's something that we would certainly have to evaluate. The district supervisor also mentioned that one of the soil samples, did have some elevated levels of contaminants. And that there was also some concern at the time that the cap was put in related to the vegetation of it at the time and some rain events and that sort of thing. So this would definitely take some digging to evaluate what we can and can't do with the land and the sites, and then what the responsibilities would be going forward, and then the costs associated with that. So that definitely would take some resources.
So, I'm trying to weigh like what's the purview of PPW at this point versus what's the purview of council. I mean, I think it's up to council to decide if it's up to staff time, you know, if it makes sense to allocate staff time to that. I think that from our perspective as a Parks and Public Works, this is my view, is it's up to us to say, do we recommend, you know, usage of this for the schools, for cross-country, keeping in mind that the township is offered to lease it and pay for all of this. So I would be in favor of a motion to get this out of PPW and in front of council.
Agreed.
And where everybody else.
Yep. I'll second that. So I'll motion to allow this Saugatuck City staff to evaluate steps to lease the landfill to Saugatuck Township for the purpose of establishing and maintaining cross-country trails for Saugatuck Public Schools.
Second.
Motion Roach, second DeYoung. Any more discussion?
I guess just one question, because other people might ask this too. If we don't do it, is there any alternative use of that land?
I think that would be part of the staff.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a lot that you could do with it. Yeah,
Especially
but
what
just-
Ken already told us.
Get to
that-
maintain the cap and all that, yeah.
Right, but
Yes.
just in terms of basic decision making, it's always, well, what is the alternative? Is the alternative just do nothing? You know, leave it as is, or is there any other use for it? I think we talked about one time, was this a different land, like a sledding opportunity or
Well,
something?
What opportunity?
Sledding
because-
opportunity.
Kenneth Butler on behalf of the Saugatuck Parks and Rec.
I'm
having
sorry.
s-
We can't have this participation. He's not a
sorry,
guest speaker.
sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry,
Okay,
Ken, but
okay,
you
all
can
right, well,
speak in
but that's
public
my only
meeting.
comment.
Yeah, okay, okay. So I think that would, to my mind, that's something that would get into front of council, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So we do have a motion on the table. Is this a roll call or a voice vote?
You could do a voice vote, you're not spending money.
Okay. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Opposed? Good. Motion carries. Okay, item D, updates on Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area.
I can take this one. So I'm trying to remember where we left it, but I know at the last meeting, we talked about the fact that there is an endowment fund for the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area that we were unaware of before. And it's kind of exciting. It's being maintained and invested by the Community Fund of Holland Zealand. And so Helen and I did a call with the person who's in charge of that. She sent over all the documentation in terms of how the investment has gone and all the management plan that was originally submitted. What we found out through that is that it needs to be updated. The management plan needs to be updated every 5 years, and we have been out of compliance since 2015. So after meeting with Colleen Hill at the Community Fund, talking with Ryan Heiss, so we decided to move over to the Land Conservancy of West Michigan because they were part of putting this into a conservation easement. And so we met with the new director. His name is Justin Hilslinga. He was fantastic. We went over the master plan with him and asked exactly what we would need to move forward with this to be in compliance so that we can actually use the funds that are in the endowment. He kind of walked us through the master plan as it was. Helen and I took some notes in terms of what needed to be changed or recommendations. We have not had an update on the property since 2010, when they looked at invasive species, endangered species, things of that nature. So we did make a recommendation that we probably want to look at where the land stands now, since it has been untouched and no money has been spent on it in terms of upkeep since 2015. The other piece of this is that there was a resolution put through for a management board to cover this. And it's specifically called out in the master plan in terms of who in the area they would like to see as a part of that. Representatives appointed by the city of Saugatuck, Saugatuck Township, the Land Conservancy of West Michigan, the Nature Conservancy, Oxbow School of Art, and other appropriate parties. So after doing some digging that Helen did here at City Hall, we did find the resolution. However, there's not much stated in that in terms of who was on that prior. So then more digging, and I don't know if you want to take it over from here because she talked to prior staff
Yeah,
their
so
council that was on during
thank
that
you.
time period.
Yeah, I talked to Mr. Johnson, who was the mayor at that time, and who, so without getting too far into the weeds, I think that where we need to be at this point is that we've taken a stab at updating the plan, and we're waiting for some information just to update the native species or the species in that from our folks at the Conservancy. At this point, we need to talk to legal, as far as I know. I've talked to the manager about establishing a board. Do we need to establish a board? It looks like, I think that we're able to get the funds from the trust without the board if we have an updated plan. That's my understanding. I think the board makes a lot more sense, though. It shouldn't just be anyone's unilateral decision to decide how to spend these funds. I think that's the reason for the board. I'd be in favor of establishing a board, even if we don't necessarily have to, because right now, we're gonna get $195,000. And nothing's been, it's all the interest that's been accrued on this, and that's available to us. And so how that gets spent on wayfinding, invasives, whatever, I think that should be something that's under the purview of not just one person. But do we have anything to offer on that, or?
Yeah, so that board was formed and approved that initial master plan. I did read through the endowment agreement with the community foundation, and it says that the manager essentially can, request the funds, like you said, as long as there's an updated plan in place. I couldn't track where, at what point the board actually went away and why it went away. There was an email with the previous manager, Kirk Carrier, kind of indicating that the city was maybe looking at doing something different with that. I asked our clerk if maybe she could find some old minutes from the city council, maybe dissolving that or delegating those duties related to the Harbor Natural area to someone else. And so far, we haven't located anything. So I think the question is, are we required to have a board still? If so, then work on establishing it. Otherwise, if we're not required to have one, then, who's best maybe to make the decision as far as, whether funds should be drawn and for what purpose.
Okay, so is that really up to legal at this point to do that, or is it up to?
So I had to circle back with our
Yeah.
clerk just to make sure that she's completed her search
Okay.
for records, just to kind of see where this went. Otherwise, then I think it will be probably a little bit of a question about, obviously, we purchased the land, and there was a mechanism set up to have a board and have these funds going forward. And so do we have a responsibility to make sure that's still in place to utilize the funds?
Okay. All right, so we know where we are, and we'll keep working that, and once we get the information back. Sounds good. Anything else on that? Okay, we can move on to item E, updates on uniform signage initiative with the tri-community, and I think that'll be Member Roach also.
Yes. So as I had said before, coming out of the 5-year parks plan, the major initiative with the 3 municipalities was connectivity. So connectivity of all of our parks and trails, our schools, and our downtown districts. And there was a lot of enthusiasm and momentum behind continuing to meet, because I think that was a really special thing that we all got together for that 5-year parks plan. And we worked really hard as a steering committee to really look globally at how we need to work together to really create some beautiful spaces here for all of us. And so one of the major things coming out is wayfinding and signage. And so how do we continue on with all of our individual projects in the 3 municipalities, but then think about how does this connect with our neighbors? And so we're going to take a stab at that this coming Tuesday, March 19th. So it'll be members of the steering committee and city councils for the 3 municipalities. And we have 2 guest speakers coming. One is the westmichigantrails.org group that I'm sure you've worked with the Blue Star Trails. So they do like the non-motorized, more formalized trails all throughout West Michigan. So we have John Morrison, who's the director of that group, coming. And really it's to give us a high-level education on sort of the safety and the universal language, so that when we get together like this and talk as a group, we can make sure that we're all talking about the same thing at the same time. And then to be able to share that with our appropriate parks groups. And then the other guest speaker that we'll have is David Nitre and Delana Eisenman, and she's the creative director at ODC. You all know David as the COO, and so obviously they have been great partners of ours for more of the more rustic hiking trail systems. And so really, it's just to create an education and a language to move forward with, and then also so that we're not operating in silos as we have been before. I think that was another thing that came out of it, is that, all of us, all three municipalities have these really outstanding goals for amenities and quality of life aspects to the community that include the parks. And so how do we continue to remain in communication and work together better? And so this is really kind of the beginning of that type of communication. So that'll be happening March 19th, and we will report back on the information that we receive with the group after that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other questions on that item before we move along? Okay. Item F, updates on conservation levels with Register of Deeds and Land Conservancy of West Michigan. I can take this?
Sure.
I can take it? Okay. So one of the things that we've been working on, obviously, is just making sure we've got updated records. I think a lot of things go by the wayside or whatever. But what are our levels of conservation? Where are the overlays? I mean, we always talk, just to be dramatic, the nightmare scenario that a different council decides to sell Oval Beach to, the Hilton Corporation or whatever. So we want to make sure that we've got these things properly conserved. Member Cherrick and Roach have come up with a listing of city property, city assets. And now the plan is to try to get a sense of where we are with that. Land Conservancy has been not as helpful as I'd hoped that they would be. It's really hard to say, and they kind of kicked us back to like looking at titles and deeds and, digging around the basement. I did have a brief conversation with the manager about a tool that we have a subscription to as the city, and that we can possibly take a look at that. We haven't gotten into it. I will have order in the gallery, please. It's very distracting when you're whispering. You're invited and welcome and always encouraged to come, but if you're going to talk, I ask you to be online and you can do all the talking you want. Thank you. So yes, we do have a tool that we have a subscription to. We'd like to take a look at that and investigate it more, but that's kind of where we're at with this, as far as I know.
Yeah, and I can just add one additional thing. We're looking at asking for some budget dollars next year to actually scan all of our historical records that are in our basements, that hopefully we'll put them in an electronic format and also make them searchable by keyword, which may help along these lines as well. So.
Yeah, I mean,
I just have a question. So would this be like for when the park was actually formed and what the charter was, or just?
I think
a little more?
it's basically, it's like the conservancy is like an easement, right? That you get on top of a land. So you might have city property,
Mhm.
but so say you have the playground or the village square. Is that conserved? Can we do anything we want with it? Could someone sell it to a private investor? These are questions that we have on all of our city properties.
But would those have been previously established and we're just not clear what they are?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, so essentially we're creating a master document with all the parks and parcel numbers, any information that we can get, because we've, as a group, has all spent a lot of time digging. And so what we'd like to do is have this so that this can be passed down for many, many years, so that there is no questions about what the city owns. And, I think the biggest thing is that there's questions on certain easements, even in this Saugatuck Harbor natural area, there's been questions on certain easements that are called out. So who do they really belong to? And do the owners know? Because that could have changed hands since 2010 as well. So essentially, we're trying to get it all cleaned up so that there are no question marks surrounding that, and we know exactly what land belongs to the city,
Okay.
and the protections are there.
right,
Right.
thanks.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks for you guys moving forward with that, because that was really a black hole sort of. that
Well,
we're
moving
moving.
forward lightly. but
Yes,
we've-
yes.
This was the most exciting thing that I saw, though. I mean, we looked at it for like 5 minutes. I'm like, I feel like this could get us to, at least the next step to finding that. And yeah, and if we can get our records straightened up, but it's just, records are tedious, right? And I think that there's just a reason, like everyone, oh, I know, he knows that, and but we need this kind of things that's just way too important to just think
Right.
you've got historical knowledge somewhere, and memories fade. And it's just good to have the documents, and it's not super exciting work, but it's really necessary.
Yep.
Did you have something, Ed? I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. What's the thought, any thought on like the data management side of that? Like I immediately think of Fleece and Vanderbrink, you know, like we had an issue, not an issue, but like it, you know, speaking to the point of the purpose of this is like, you know, we had a property that has like an access easement over one of our parks, the Village Square Park. And so there was a question of like, who plows that easement?
Hmm.
Well, we, you know, kind of are scratching our heads. There's no record of that. So speaking to your point, this is a great idea. And I just, if there hasn't been already, I would consider maybe consulting with Fleece and Vanderbrink about the data management aspect of it.
Perfect.
That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something that wouldn't have occurred to me, so thank you. Okay, so that brings us to our study group updates. Invasive species, member Charik is not here. I don't think we have any updates necessarily on that. Other than having Land Conservancy look at basically what the invasives might be updated in the Saugatuck Harbor Natural Area. They are looking at that.
Yeah.
Um,
And I can say I went to a meeting at the Saugatuck Middle School where I run the fundraiser every year, which is the Servathon. We did invasive species work at Mount Bald last year, and they would like to continue on with something like that for the 8th graders. So it has not been identified yet as far as where we'll go. I'll bring it to council or to DPW before. And Rotary contributed to that. So it was a wonderful alignment of many different
And it was
groups.
fun.
Local, and it was
And it was
great.
productive.
And the kids loved it. So anyway, hopefully that will continue.
Okay.
Madam Chair, anyway, I have one thing on there too, along like the milfoil front. I've asked the contractor that's kind of done the treatments the last 2 or 3 years to attend, I think it's probably going to be your April 3rd workshop meeting. The council's April 3rd workshop
Okay.
meeting to just kind of answer some questions and kind of, advise on how the treatment's been going, things to expect maybe for this summer if treatments are going to continue, the water levels are down. So there may be some additional concerns. And obviously there's other vegetation too that would impact our waterways, but so something
That
that.
and in conjunction with the tri-community too, right? I think I saw that item too, as far as like what Douglas and the township are also doing, or is it just?
So Douglas, yes, is also doing the milfoil treatments and yep, we can update you on their thoughts on that. I do.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, airport property. Member DeYoung, would you like to take this?
Sure. Yes, I would. Lots of developments at the airport property. I'll tell you the bottom line and then I'll back up and give the story. We have a donor that wants to donate in the name of their father, who had a second home here, $130,000 to do some improvements at the airport property. So that's the bottom line. I'll back up and tell you the whole story. I think last October, maybe September or October, I had a neighbor mention to me that there was a family that was interested in funding some projects in the Saugatuck Douglas area. And if I could reach out to them and start conversations. So it's been along 6 months, which I guess in municipality time is a short period of time. To me, that seemed like forever. But began discussions with them, what their family was interested in, what their father had loved about the area. And we started narrowing down some projects. I did with him. I talked to him first and his sister, and now, their kids are involved. And the airport property was one of what we started out with, a larger list. And by the way, it wasn't just me. I started drawing some people in, other friends from the Parks Committee, also Riverwood Council that I've been serving on for a long time with John Vanderbeek has been very helpful. And he's had discussions with the township. And we brought a plate full of options to them. And then we started narrowing it down. And that was the challenge, was to narrow it down because it kept trying to get bigger. And I kept trying to narrow it down. And what we ended up with, at least one proposal, and they still may do more, is the airport property. But they needed to get their arms around, what was it actually that could be done and what was the amount that was needed. So we did work with Outdoor Discovery Center, and they helped us put together a vision of what could be done there. And it's really an overlay on what has already taken place there, of just keeping it very natural, opening up for hiking trails. But this brings it to the next level, which I think helps protect the area a little bit more. So it would be trail development, but with the trails that are already there, with a lot of signage. So it links in with the signage project we've been talking about, and also keeping people and traffic off from the more critical areas and the wildlife, areas that we don't want to disturb. It would involve a conservation overlay, but not on the whole property, and that would be yet to be determined. But I think that also ties into the last topic we talked about of conservation, because that's a beautiful area if you haven't been out there and hiked it. And there's a lot of pieces that could be conserved, but we don't think we need to conserve the whole part, because there's other parts of it that could be left for future discussion. There would be a parking area with a nice kiosk that would invite people to the area. Am I forgetting anything else? Oh, there was habitat restoration, because some of it has been disturbed when it was going to be an old airport and other things.
Right.
So the first part of that would be invasive species management. So what I really like about this is that it draws in a lot of the topics we've been talking about and applying it to that one area. So invasive species management, especially where the the refuse from the yard refuse goes, because that can really start spreading the invasive species. So management of that, and then replanting of some wild flowers or whatever would go in the area. So I think we're very excited about that. We need to, I'm not sure what the next steps are.
So I think really right now, we've already taken this to council as far as, so council is already aware of, anything that has to happen, has to be done there. Make council aware of the fact that there is a donor that's interested in the airport property. And then, just like anything else, we don't necessarily just take that and run with it and we've got a donor. So now it's still got to go through the approvals and that. So I think that it's just good information to have. And it's exciting information if you're someone like me who thinks that place is something very special that we need to open up to the public. And again, what we're looking at is if this does go through, it would be just legitimizing the trails, as we've already said, that are already there, making it a little more welcoming with a trailhead and getting that parking area. It's pretty rough getting that kind of situated. So it would be lovely to have, and very hopeful that can go through. But yeah, at this point, it's in the hands of staff and council, I would say.
Okay, so we don't have to approve anything here.
No, I don't think so. Do you, Mr. Manager?
No, not necessarily. I think, we, depending on what the mayor pro tem would like to do, we could certainly add this as a work session item for the council. Yeah, to make them aware that there's a donor and their interest in this property and the proposal that they're interested in funding, and see if the council's willing to continue further discussions with this donor and that project, or if the council wants to go in a different direction.
I think that's a good plan. Agreed. All right, good. Next item is Blue Star Trail. I think we've covered that.
I think we've covered that.
Village Square and Playground. Member Roach, did you want to take that one?
Sure. So as Scott mentioned, they have been doing heavy prep for an April 15th, 16th, and 17th build. So we do have those dates out, and Sarah has been kind enough to send that out via the email for the city of Saugatuck. And so far we have a lot of takers. So it's just a general sign up genius. We're in need of 30 volunteers each day, 8 to 5, and definitely send it out to all your friends and neighbors. I have it being sent through the school system as well. So both of the PTOs, and then pushed out through social media. If people ask you questions about it, they don't need to come for a full day. We will take anybody that wants to come for any portion of it. Also, not all of it is heavy lifting, because I've had questions about that. So there are a ton of it's like nuts and bolts and things that you're putting together. So we'll have tables set up so that there's sort of like a conveyor line where people are putting that together. So it is open welcome for anyone who wants to join. We are going to pray for great weather in April, which might be challenging, but we're going to go with it. And then obviously we've got DPW that's going to support it. So we're thankful for that. And all of the engineers from Sinclair, which is the vendor. So we have knowledgeable people on site. Lunch will be provided. We need to figure that part out. And I think that's it.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think site prep is pretty much completed, and you know, a reminder, you know, when you're doing the deconstruction phase of a project, there is that initial shock factor of like, whoa, this is different. It doesn't look great. But I do have the equipment up at Public Works. Feel free to stop by and take a look at it. You can't see all of it, but you can see some of the composite materials and you know, the little critters that are designed within them, and it's pretty cool. So it gets me pumped up just to see it all, you know, ready to go for us and just unpack it. It's like a big Christmas. So I'm excited about this. And then, you know, of course, too, we're gonna, you know, after the project is completed, you know, we did, just to touch base once more, we did talk to Sinclair Recreation, and they're willing to donate a couple of trees to us, so we can kind of create some differentiating between the park and the nearest bed and breakfast in that area.
Mhm.
So some screening for everybody.
Yeah, and I think just to, if there's any anxiety about it, I did talk with the vendor in terms of the prep. And, you know, a lot of what the space is looking like right now, they have to build it out for safety purposes, right? We have to have, if you look at the drawings which are available, there's a safety radius about around all of these pieces of equipment. And so it looks very large now, but it comes in quite a bit from the sides, and all of that will be mulched out. So it's not all going to be equipment. So just as people ask questions about that, keep that in mind, that a lot of that has to be built out to then be put back together in, right?
Yeah, it's exciting, and I'm personally signed up all 3 days and looking forward to it. And yes, to encourage your friends and neighbors to get out there and let's get that put together. It's exciting. Okay, number 5, Park Street, Mount Bald Head and AT&T. I know that we're going to talk extensively about Mount Bald Head improvements at our next meeting. I don't think that there's any updates with Park Street. We don't have Member Johnson here today. Is there anything, Scott, that you can offer?
Not much more than just to reverting back to our capital improvements plan that the city, you know, spends a great deal of time analyzing, and we will continue to analyze that. But you know, Park Street, you know, it's a big project. And so I know, only speaking for John Moxie and myself, all we can do is simply make recommendation to council. Council has the ultimate say in what we do, but you know, within the next few years, John and I will be recommending that we take a little closer look at the section of Park Street between what's called Bliss Street, even though it's not a plotted city street. We'll call it Bliss Street, and then to where we ended construction just north of Mount Bald Head. So that area in particular, we've got some erosion issues on Holiday Hill that need to be contended with. That's when it would be an appropriate time to look at, you know, pedestrian like safety improvements in the Chain Ferry area, that sort of thing. But we've got some heavy hitter projects before that, in my opinion, which are you know, the road work that we have this year or next year. We're going to be recommending taking a hard look at Maple Street, which is a very expensive project for the city, somewhere around $2.4 million for that project, because it needs some water main overhaul. So there's very good reason. You know, unfortunately, there are delays in this type of work. Everyone has, you know, an appetite for Park Street, but there are reasons why these things take a little bit longer than what most people would hope for.
Do we know, are they still planning to bury lines over there? And do we have a timeline on that?
I haven't heard anything about consumers burying lines anytime soon, I should say. So-
Okay, that was something that was brought up with Manager Heiss. And that was something that we were wanting to have more information on, is because we do have an interest in some safety aspects with the trail, or not having a walkway over there. And is that an opportunity to take a look at that? And we just weren't sure.
I don't know if Ed-
Yeah, I can see, you know, take a look back and see if there was some kind of correspondence that he was able to have with consumers on any immediate plans they might have to bury some lines over there. I can update on AT&T. I mean, essentially we're waiting on a further State Historic Preservation Office review. So the SHPO acronym initially had some concerns, and so the AT&T team had to kind of put together some updated information for them to consider, and some alternatives for them to think about. And so SHPO's indicated that's going to take at least 30 days, and so everything's kind of on hold pending that review and seeing what the outcome of that is.
Okay, good. And I know that, like I said, next meeting, we're going to talk about Mount Bald Head. I'm excited to see it because we've got some restroom renderings to look at.
Mm.
So very exciting stuff. All right, so for now, I think, I mean, as far as review next steps, I think that we've got that well in hand unless anyone has any questions on that. And that brings us to our second public comment section. Anyone in the audience care to speak? Please state your name and address.
My name's Joe Leonardi. I live at 712 Allegan. I've heard of a lot of discussions about the airport property. And there's some plausible ideas there, but the one thing I haven't heard from anybody here is a cost benefit analysis. What is the property worth? When you know what the property is worth or what suggested end uses could be to maximize their value, then you can make decisions. I heard a lot of things going on here about things that are gonna cost us money, sewer pipes, whatever. Okay, what is that property worth? Are we better off selling that property, taking the money and putting into other public works? Or turning it into a park? No one's against green spaces, but and an idea of having the cross-country team run there. How many kids are on the cross-country team? And how many of them live in this community? I'm all for something like that. But what are the cost benefit analysis? Are you worth spending the money on that, or are there worthy things? And until you determine what the value of the property is, I don't see how you can make any plans. And also, when you're talking about a park, all right, are you gonna have to spend money on a paved parking area? What's it going to do in terms of, is there increased liability insurance that's going to have to be taken? Are you going to have somebody patrol the area? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that, but I haven't heard any of them come up in discussion. And I'm going to get back to what I keep harping on. This is the cost benefit analysis. That has to be the first step in doing anything. What is the property worth? Then you can make an intelligent decision on, are you better off? And I don't have the answer. Maybe if you have that person come up with a suggestion and they're going to say to you, you know, the best use for that land is a park. And also too, I've had a couple of people mention to me that the township is interested in buying that property. Well, and I think it was for a park. What's the value of that? How do you determine what fair market value is? So I would encourage people to do that. There are people, that's all they do. What's the value of the property? And what's the ideal end use? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonardi.
Dan Fox, City Saugatuck, up on the North Hill, as I refer to it. First, apologize if my quiet remarks to my good friend Joe were somehow upsetting to you. It's a long-standing tradition in this room of whispered comments in the gallery. But the apology is sincere if you were offended or distressed. And by the way, there were also comments between the council member here and the person who was sitting to her right that were not commented upon. So just saying. Two quick comments on the subjects of the meeting. On the cross-country trails leasing, that's an interesting idea. I hadn't heard of that before to the township. I was aware, as Joe mentioned, also, I think separately from Joe, that there is township interest in that property. In any of those instances, you didn't mention, and maybe it's premature, whether the DPW site would be grandfathered if the township were suddenly leasing the property, or if maybe they wouldn't lease that part of it. I don't know, but that use of that property is important to the city, I think. Also, as it relates to use of the trails or cross-country or whatever the hell that is, the EPA report and what I'm told is a waste management perpetual statement about the sealing of the property and what can be done and who can go on it and all the rest of that. I think that's really worth taking a close look at, because that opens up some liability potential that's scary. And I mean, it's also scary if you're a parent of a kid who's running out there and 10 years from now, he gets who knows what. So anyway, that's enough on that. My second point or second here with a minute left relates to a possible backup plan for the intersection, Blue Star intersection, stoplight intersection, whatever you want to call it, for the trail. If for whatever reason, and I was told the number was $600,000 for that stoplight, but whatever, if that becomes an iffy deal, they can't get the stoplight or whatever. A thought is to simply at that corner, turn the trail, and I always lose my sense of direction out there, but I think it's turn it north on Culver, whatever that is. Make the right, so if you're coming from the north, you turn right 90 degrees and go down to where the existing crossing is, which is another, whatever it is, quarter of a block or something like that. Cross there, come back and whatever. You could put flashing red lights at that crossing that could be constant or could be activated by cyclists or whatever. And you could potentially save a ton of money with only the inconvenience of making a jog. And there are plenty of jogs on that trail. Also, as to the turning radius thing, I've never seen a semi turning there. If that's an issue, another way to save money, put up a sign that says, no trucks at the next intersection on Blue Star. So whatever, I hope that's of some use. Also, that, by the way, that the dangerous part of that intersection for me is the left turn onto Blue Star, where we're coming down that hill, nobody's looking for a car coming out and crossing the lane in front of them. That's another easy one. That should be a no left turn onto Blue Star from that intersection. I know there haven't been a lot of accidents there, but that is one waiting to happen. Sorry for going long. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Any public comment online? No? All right, well,
Hi, wait, I didn't raise my hand fast enough.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gardner, please.
Thank you,
State your
Russ
name and
Gardner.
address.
Russ Gardner, 245 Spear Street, also Saugatuck City Council. Thank you, everyone, for your service to our community on the committee, and sat in today to listen to a few topics. The one I do want to comment on is the airport property, which seems to get a lot of conversation in the community. It is important to remember that this is a city asset that has to be evaluated for best use by the city and ultimately the city council. That process has not been undertaken to evaluate if the city is best selling the property or perhaps selling it to a township has been mentioned, or to another third party, or perhaps to develop in different ways. That process needs to be undertaken before any serious discussion is undertaken with someone who may be interested in donating money for the development of that property. It's not a park. It is not currently a priority in our capital improvement plan. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Russ. Anyone else? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and close public comments and go on to member closing comments. Nancy, if you would like to start.
Oh, just thanks for a great meeting. And just for future reference, maybe you touched on a little bit, Scott, with the roads, but I was out to dinner with some of the ladies of the Hill recently. And then the question did come up of, why are our roads so bad? And then they looked at me as a member of PPW and I said, well, I'll mention it. So just so you know, but otherwise great meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think a lot of progress on a lot of things, so I'm happy to see that. The airport property, is one of several properties that are on the list that we are looking at, and if they're conserved. And I'm not sure if we would move ahead with the airport property, cost benefit and what the value is, why we wouldn't do that with every other property like Oval Beach and Mount Baldhead and Village Square. And we don't do that because those are our assets that we value. And so I don't know why we would put the airport property in a different category to look at that. It's just an asset that we have that's valuable, that hasn't been that known, and we're trying to get it known so people can enjoy it just like the other parks. So thank you.
I just want to thank everyone for all their time and effort. And I want to thank Member DeYoung for all of her work on working with the donors, because I think that's a really important thing. And one of the things we talked about when we first started is that there's a lot of people that really love this area. And so if we can be proactive instead of reactive and be able to have an understanding of where we're headed and we have our priorities straight, then people do want to give. And I think that's a really fantastic thing and something to be really excited about. And I thank everybody else for all the work, and I'm really excited about the playground. So I look forward to seeing everybody April 15th, 16th, and 17th.
Well, I'll close by just saying that I want everyone on this committee to know how much I appreciate their work. I think, I mean, I'm public service and I'm elected, so I think that I sign up to take a little more abuse than most of us do. But I think that you guys are becoming aware of how it can be a little bit trying at times. I mean, the playground has not been without its very vocal criticism, airport property, all these things that we work really hard to achieve now. That's part of democracy, and I'm happy to have the pushback and the criticism, and that makes us better. But I want you to know that we're getting a lot of good progress done. This playground is going to happen. It's beautiful. It's exciting. And just to keep in mind, to always remember the wins, and it'll power you through. And I want you to know that I very much appreciate you if it makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
I will motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Roach, second Kimball. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Welcome to public service.